Elfy Scott, welcome to How Do You Hustle? You are obviously a journalist, presenter, and author. I'm so happy to have you on the show. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. I am tired because it is my second week of full-time work in like 2 years.
Oh,
So I feel like
wow.
my brain is like seeping out of my ears right now. So if I'm like really off, that's what's happening.
I can actually relate to that. I've recently gone back to full-time work. This is my
Oh,
soft launch on the podcast. Haven't told them that yet. But
where
yeah,
are you working?
I'm working at a not-for-profit doing digital marketing. What about
Wow.
yourself?
Congratulations. I'm over at Mamma Mia
Thank you.
now working as the editor.
Oh, I did see that. Oh my God, I'm incredible.
Oh, thank you. I'm tired. I don't know what's happening yet, but I'm tired.
Well, that kind of teases us into what you're doing at the moment. But I will just ask, like, what are your career focuses at the moment? Because I know you do have a lot of your fingers in a few different pies per se. So yeah, what's your main career focus at the moment?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and like a question to which I don't even know the answer. So, um, I would say that, like, honestly, this is something that I've come to realize quite recently, but I don't have career aspirations or like work
Wow.
dreams. Like, you know how people have like work goals and they'll be like, I'm working towards this, here are all the steps that I need to get there. It's a 5-year plan. I don't have that at all. Like, I literally just do things that I'm passionate about and I feel like contribute in some way. And it's just a massive, weird jumble. But I would say that in terms of like my focuses right now, like I'm pretty passionate about editing at Mamma Mia, and I really want to work with the team of writers and like build them up and make them feel confident and like, work as hard as I can to empower other people to get their voices out there. But also, like, I'm still doing other stuff on the side too. So who knows?
That's amazing. I don't know how people work full time and do other stuff on the side. I mean, I am doing that too.
Yeah, you're literally
But yeah,
interviewing me after your job.
and you too. Yeah, I know. We all kind of do it these days, don't we? Like it's such a like side hustle culture, but it also is like that cost of living. Like if you want to achieve your own goals, you also have to have a 9 to 5. So we're
It's the
just all out here
economic
hustling.
crisis, baby. Yeah. Especially for people who work in the media. Like, what else are we supposed to do? There aren't other
Exactly.
options.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably a whole other conversation that we can open
True.
up. But so how did you get started in the media industry and the industry you're in?
Uh, so I would say that like I was always writing. I was one of those people who had like a full-time Tumblr blog back in the day, and
Amazing.
through that, I started to write online articles. I became like a columnist when I was like 20, which, by the way, for anybody who is thinking about
Incredible.
hiring a 20-year-old columnist, don't do it because they have bad opinions and they're idiots. But like, no, I shouldn't say that in general. 20-year-olds, you're very smart.
Yeah.
But I certainly wasn't. And then from there, I took a couple of years off actually, and then I finished university degrees. But like my proper first journalism job was at BuzzFeed News, and I started there after I did a master's in journalism, and I was their first like science reporter. So yeah, that's
Wow.
kind of where I started.
Yes. I have noticed that you've got like a few different kind of areas of interest or subject matters that you do cover. So can you tell us what those kind of are and like why they are of interest to you?
Yeah, sure. Again, totally unfocused human being. Like, I have no idea. You know how people get like,
Multifaceted.
no, it's not a good thing. I think it actually kind of detracts from my career, but like, you know how certain people have things in like their Instagram bio, like, mental health or like body positivity or stuff like that. Nobody knows what barrel to put me in, so like people are just like perpetually confused by what I actually do. But I would say that honestly, I like the things I like. Like I'm just kind of a nerd, and I like mental health. I started out at university in a psychology degree, so that's kind of where that came from. And I also really like talking about climate change. I think that that's kind of part and parcel of being somebody who's interested in science, that I became really focused on climate change when I started reporting. But then other than that, yeah, it's like a very vast array of things that I'm interested in, like politics, current affairs, weirdly like international news I'm really into as well. Like I'm deeply into like reporting on sort of global affairs stuff, but nobody ever lets me do that.
And
So
I've noticed
yeah.
you kind of delving into the climate kind of space as well at the moment.
Yeah, so I actually had a podcast last year, which was a weekly environmental news podcast. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting space to be in, basically because like I think that it's one of those things where everybody has like a top line understanding of why they care about climate change. And that's great and that's really important. But then it's really complicated to get into the nuts and bolts of actual climate action on a governmental level. So I think that's why I really like talking about it, is because those sort of things should be transparent processes for everybody. And right now it's like super opaque. Nobody knows what the fuck is happening. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on your podcast.
You are. You absolutely are.
Fantastic. But yeah, I really like, I think in general, my passion is trying to explain complicated things in accessible ways. And like climate change is that in a nutshell.
Exactly. That really relates for me because I am a former journo and I used to cover a lot of environmental stories and realized it was a area of interest, and now that's why I'm helping out in the environmental not-for-profit space, doing work there. So yeah, it's kind of come full circle.
That.
Like I always was interested in that, but yeah, I completely understand what you're saying, and I just love that you started that podcast. Like I really admire a lot of the work you do, which we're going to expand on more. But yeah, I think
that's very kind.
I think there's not enough really strong young voices in the space, in my opinion. I think we could have more.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are lots of like really smart young advocates, but like, yeah, I agree. It's like far as it goes with like journalism, especially around climate change, like I think like Australian media is very reticent to talk about it in general because it doesn't get clicks and it's really hard to drive traffic towards climate change reporting. But then also like, yeah, specifically young people reporting on it, that's, yeah, it's hard to get your foot in the door, especially on environmental reporting, because everybody who has these senior positions in environmental reporting are like 60 years old, they've done environmental degrees, they've done all this like really academic stuff. So yeah, I think it's like a really hard road to tread for young people.
For sure. Hopefully we see that change. So obviously one of your other areas that you speak on is mental health, and you have released your book, The One Thing We've Never Spoken About, Exposing Our Untold Mental Health Crisis. So what made you decide to write a book, for starters, on top of everything else? And did it sort of come from a frustration with this system? Obviously, you've got a personal experience with living with someone with a severe mental illness. So yeah, what kind of drove you to write the book, and like what failings did you kind of notice that did drive you to do that?
Yeah, sure. So as to what drove me to write the book in the first place, I think I'm like incredibly impulsive and I didn't actually think it through at all. So I'm not going to act like that was a really, yeah, that wasn't like a well-rounded decision. But yeah, I guess like the themes in the book, basically it is talking about my mum who lives with schizophrenia, but that's only a jumping board for like a really broad discussion that I have in the book about stigma that still surrounds complex mental health conditions and like wide systemic failings. And to be honest, like my family hasn't had experience with those systemic failings because we come from a place of extreme socioeconomic privilege. Like we haven't really had to deal with what everybody else has had to deal with. We're incredibly lucky for that. But you know, I think that the stigma is something that touches everybody who knows somebody with a complex mental health condition or lives with one. So that was really my starting point, was just noticing that it was just this thing that we could never talk about appropriately for the title of the book. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a matter of starting to investigate the stigma and like why it was still so cloaked in silence, but then that sort of logically took me on a track to understanding all of these massive mental health care systemic failings that keep people from recovery and keep people falling through the cracks, basically.
I love it. And I think like it's something, you know, that's close to a lot of people's hearts. I know in my family there's people that have experienced similar things. And like, yeah, I think it is funny because it is still a thing that we, oh, don't tell anyone that, you know. And I just wonder when that's going to change. Like, you know, if you look at the statistics in Australia, it's really incredible and not in a good way, like how many people are suffering in silence, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
And I just
absolutely.
don't know what it's going to take. Like, yeah. What do you think on that topic? Are there key things that do need to change in Australia to kind of start reducing that stigma? I know that's a huge question, but yeah, like what is your opinion on this topic?
Yeah, it's obviously like a really multifaceted question with a multifaceted answer. It kind of requires an entire book to walk through annoyingly. Um, but like there are so many different parts of it. And in the book I kind of draw out the cycle that I see between stigma and systemic failure. Um, and you know, there are obviously like governmental things that can happen. There can be like changes to social support, housing support, the criminal justice system that can have ramifications for people who are living with these conditions. But then also, like, in terms of what I would love to see is basically just like an opening up of this conversation. And that's really all I have power to do, is just to try and open up the conversation, because right now it's just non-existent. It's really shocking. And yeah, like you said, like anybody who has family experience with these sort of things, you will notice that you can hear about depression, you can hear about anxiety, you can hear about ADHD increasingly, but yeah, you just don't hear these words. You don't hear the words schizophrenia or bipolar or schizoaffective disorder. Like those just aren't in people's dictionaries yet. So I think that like opening up the conversation is the first step for a lot of us, and also educating ourselves, really.
For sure. And I think there is a long way to go with education. Like, I don't even remember going through the Australian school system ever really hearing about mental health at all, not in my
Yeah.
education.
I was trying to remember this the other day, and I think that like maybe I heard about like depression in like PDHPE or
Yeah,
whatever, but
maybe.
like I think that
And it
was
was like this
basically all I
foreign
got.
thing, you know, it wasn't like
Yeah,
sold to
totally. It
us as
wasn't
something
like,
that could happen, you know, to you.
yes,
Or will
100%. It wasn't
likely
like,
happen to you.
yeah, it wasn't like look out for your peers or like look out for yourself. It's like, oh, this happens to some people sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. It's interesting. So how did you find the process of writing a book? And how long did it take you to kind of, obviously there's a lot of ideas and you said it's a really complex issue. So yeah, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I've got the worst memory, honestly. So I know this happened like 6 months ago, and I'm like, I don't remember. But I think the book from like start to finish, including editing, took like a year, I think. And the process, like, it was a lot. And logistically, it was a lot because like I'm horrible at planning, and I'm horrible at keeping things in like short-term memory and like trying to remember things and make sure that I'm keeping in touch with everybody, because I interviewed like 85 people for the book. So like
Wow,
by the
that's
end of the process,
amazing.
yeah, it was like a lot. And like I had to do so much administration, which I'm terrible at. But honestly, like other than that, other than the magnitude of it, it actually felt like quite a natural process, because like, I mean, you'd know as a journalist, like in a typical week, how much are you writing? You're probably writing like easily at least 5,000 words, if not like 10,000 words. And, you know, I think that it's really just a case of trying to like amplify that and trying to figure out like the logistical stuff and like organizing your brain. But like writing itself is kind of fun and creative and
It
interesting.
is.
Yeah.
So also, like, how did that come about that it got published? Like, did you approach someone with a pitch, or I'm just genuinely interested. Did you, approach someone with a pitch, or did someone kind of come to you after you like had a contact, or?
Yeah, it's very weird, the process of getting stuff published.
Right.
Like the publishing industry is such a weird place. Like just for anybody, even who works in the media, you think you'd understand it, and then like it's just
Yeah, I
real
don't.
topsy-turvy. Yeah, no, don't even bother. But like in terms of getting a book published, you kind of just write up a pitch, and I'm lucky because I have an agent, so she sort of represented me and my interests, and we went to a bunch of different publishing houses, and ultimately I got offers from a couple of places, but I went with Pantera Press. And I was talking to somebody about this today, and it's literally just because like I really liked them and they were nice. And I think that that's like the most important thing when you're trying to write a book, is that you're working with people who you think are nice and you could be friends with. Yeah, so that's really what I prioritized, and that's how it got started.
Amazing. And it's obviously a testament to your pitch because yeah, like that's an incredible achievement. You know, most people aspire to that in their whole lifetime, and you've achieved it at such a like relatively young age.
If I can do it, anybody can do it. I'm telling you that right now.
So yeah, you also have a podcast. You do a lot of media appearances. Tell us. Sorry, I'm going to do that again. You also have a couple of different podcasts. You write and you do a lot of media appearances as well as your job at Mamma Mia. So tell us like what you enjoy most about what you do and how you kind of time manage.
Yeah, sure. So the podcasts are actually not happening anymore. They sort of wrapped up very late last year. But in
Cool.
terms of how I time manage, like, yeah, I'm still doing all the book stuff. I'm, you know, interviewing with you for this podcast. Yeah, so there's lots of like media appearances and stuff like that and various jobs. But in terms of how I time manage, ugh, I don't think I do really. Because like, I mean, realistically,
The best people don't.
p.m. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Like it's 7 p.m. on a Monday and I'm doing this, and it's not work, like I'm enjoying myself, but you know, like I'll still say yes to everything, you know what I mean? Like I don't have
Right.
boundaries on this stuff.
And that can be hard, yeah.
Yeah, my partner is always telling me to absolutely just try and make breaks for myself. So sometimes I will listen to him, but most of the time I won't.
I think, yeah, when you're freelancing, it's a bit different, isn't it? Because your work hours can be anywhere from 6 to 8 p.m. But when you're working in that 9 to 5, you've got the commute. Like, really, there isn't much time in there, and it's very easy to overwhelm yourself with plans and get burnt out. And that's something, you know, a lot of us have experienced.
Totally.
But yeah, it's something I hear so much. Like, it's, of course, you want to say yes to things, but yeah, I guess you just have to. It's all about like maybe, yeah, time blocking, relaxation time.
Yeah.
Choose relaxation.
I have no relaxation. No, I do, actually. That's untrue. I love TV.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love lying down? It's the best.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, as a freelancer, and this is what I preach and what I never practiced, even though I was freelancing for like 2 years, like everything you do as a freelancer is self-generated, right? Like you always have to come up
Yeah.
with your own ideas. And it's like, I think the mental exhaustion of being a freelancer is really like under discussed compared to
It
the
is.
burnout that you have from full-time work, because like you burn yourself out.
You
And
do.
what I came to realize is that you actually have to give yourself breaks, because otherwise you won't even come up with ideas. Like you have no productivity anymore anyway.
Exactly.
So like you need to take the time off to try and like think about your, yeah, to just try and like be creative again, because that goes so quickly when you're tired.
Exactly. And yeah, I got a real shock. I freelanced last year and yeah, like I'd worked in, for TV, radio stations, like PR agencies, and I was like, oh, this will be a breeze. And it wasn't. It was
No.
invoicing, time management,
Oh my God.
pitching.
Fucking
It's a lot.
invoicing. Yeah,
I take
100%.
my hat off to anyone doing it. And like I would go from writing a media release to producing a podcast for someone who, odd digital media tasks. And I was like, spinning. I loved it, but it's really tough. And I think like they need almost like a training course for people going into freelancing. It's not for the faint of heart.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's hard. I see those memes all the time that are like, I quit my 9 to 5 so that I could have,
To be girl
more
boss.
time. Yeah. And then it's like, so I could work, twice as many hours a week being a freelancer. And it's so true.
It is. And like this podcast is about kind of creating your own careers. And like I do like love the idea of people who start their own business and grow that and, like work for themselves, be their own boss, like make their own salary. But at the same time, that shouldn't come at the cost of your own well-being. And I think that's something I harp on about now is just like really self-preservation and making sure that you're not just burning the candle at both ends, no matter what you're doing, whether it's full-time work, freelancing, side hustles, like it's just something's got to give and it shouldn't be your well-being and mental health.
Totally. 100%. Like that should just like never be overlooked. I really don't understand those people who are proponents of like not sleeping and those people who are like proud of not sleeping and stuff like that. I'm like, never be proud of that.
I could never do it.
I know. I also think like, I'm 30 like in a week's time, right? And
wow.
I've been with my partner for like 4 years, and realistically, like if I have to think about what work means to me for the next couple of years, it means like maternity leave. It means
Absolutely.
like, trying to have a stable job so that I can get a mortgage. Like there are very practical, realistic things that you need work for sometimes. And like freelancing was never going to be able to provide me with those things. So I don't know, like I really do think that you have to just try and be like as realistic as humanly possible when it comes to planning your career.
Absolutely. I am in the exact same boat. I turned 30 last year. And yeah, like exactly, completely relate to that. So I think it's just the stage of life you're at. I mean, I'm sure freelancing would be great when you do have kids and maybe in your earlier years, but while you're at uni, but yeah, it would be tough trying to get a mortgage in some situations. But hey, a lot of our listeners are freelancers and have their own businesses, and it is possible. And sometimes all it takes is like a really good contract and it changes everything.
Yes. Yeah, that is absolutely true. Yeah, like my partner is still freelancing. He's a screenwriter. So like there's a good balance in our household going on. But yeah, even when we had the conversation with the mortgage broker the other day, he was like, okay, what do you do? And I was like, well, I'm an editor now. And he was like to my partner, well, what do you do? And my partner was like, well, it's very hard to explain. And this guy like, fundamentally did not understand how he was making money. So, I mean, I just think that, that it can work out for some people, but it just really depends on where you're at in your life.
What advice would you give to someone who is just starting out freelancing?
Oh, okay. I would take very seriously what like a work environment means to you and whether or not you need people around. Because like that was one of the biggest things when I was writing the book is that I actually just got extremely lonely because I need to be around people and I like bouncing ideas off people, and even just like having a chat. So if you are a person like me, I would suggest that you start setting up lunches, like have coffees with people during the day. You just don't want to be alone if you're in that situation. So yeah, I would really assess what like a meaningful, fulfilling day is to you. Um, and on top of that, like I don't know, it really depends what sort of things that you're trying to do. I think it's entirely possible to like live a really happy life as a freelancer, but it just depends what your priorities are, really.
And I think a really important one is like solidifying those contacts you already have. So
Mm.
like thinking about who did I work with 3 years ago that, runs a business or runs a agency, and like talking to them, like not being afraid to put yourself out there, I think is another big one. Because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what it is,
100%.
isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And look, like it sounds gross. I don't mean it to sound gross, but like at the end of the day, like friends will give friends work too. So I think that
Absolutely.
like trying to like keep up with your network, like doing all of that, like the coffees and lunches can help for sure. But like, yeah, just reminding people that you exist is like one of the biggest parts of working as a freelancer, I think.
Yeah, amazing. So I'll just ask one more question. So what advice would you give to someone that is maybe wanting to start out in the media or editing, digital media kind of world? And like, I guess, what do you wish you knew all those years ago when you started out in this industry? Like, what's a piece of advice you wish you'd been told or you would like to give?
I think the biggest like although okay, so when I was doing my media degree, basically the thing that everybody kept repeating was that there's no jobs in media. There's no jobs. If
Yeah.
you're training to be a journalist, you will die on the streets. And like I
Yeah.
I really don't think that's true. I just
No.
think that like
We both did it,
journalism,
clearly.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're living, we're thriving. Um, I just think that like you it's nice because you have this license to be creative with how you build your career in media. So honestly, like all I have ever done is pursued what I think is interesting or meaningful at that point in time. And like that's the really nice thing is that you can jump from broadcast, you can to like print media to digital media. You can just like have your what did you say before you had I had my finger in a lot of pies? Like, yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have your finger in a lot of pies and like, try out different things. And actually I'm reading this fantastic book at the moment. It's called Range, and it's basically the perfect book for anybody who is having like an early career crisis because they feel like they've been doing too many different things and they're not on like a traditional trajectory and they don't have like a path carved out for them. And the nice thing is that you can carve out your own path, and actually like having expertise in a whole
Ah,
bunch of different fields is really helpful. So yeah, like
for
that's what
sure.
I would say. I would just say like try everything out, see what you like.